Hey everyone, Eric with Rockin' H. In today's project video, what we're going to do is take this stock DCP Transtar 2 and turn it into this Transtar. This is a 1975 Transtar. This is William's father's truck, and he would like a replica of it. We don't have very many good photos to go from. The photos we have here are pretty poor. It's all they have, and a lot of times this is the best we can do. What are we going to do to this truck? The real one needs the proper front tires. The rear wheels need to be black Dayton's versus gray on the donor model. The passenger side has a black fuel tank, and then it looks like a step or something in there. I can't really tell, or maybe an air can. That might be, well, that's actually on the donor. So I think what we'll only have to do on the driver's side is swap out for a smaller fuel tank and then paint the air can black to match the fuel tank. On the driver's side, again, we've got pretty poor photos. It looks like we have a round chrome tank, pretty short chrome tank on the front, and it looks like a small ladder behind the front steering wheel, and perhaps a step behind the fuel tank. I can't tell what the wheelbase is. It looks a little longer than the stock model, but we're just gonna have to put a fuel tank on there and see how it looks. And then of course the big change that we'll have to make is to put a blue stripe on there, or a small stripe. And actually I went to my client and I said, I've got this color I used on a 71 GMC and it is medium green. And he said that was an acceptable color. So that's a good thing. We only have to do that little bit of work. We're going to do something a little different on this truck. We're not going to strip it all the way down to bare metal. We're just going to mask it off and put the green stripe on it and then put it back together. So going to be a little bit of an easier project, and we'll have an opportunity to learn a lot on this one. Let's get to work. Of course, you're going to need a parts bin because we are going to take some parts off of this truck. And we're going to start with the cab. We're going to remove it from the frame. On these Transtars, tilt it up, it snaps into place, and then if you kind of twist it, just like so, and push against one side, the other side will come off fairly easy. We don't have to do anything with the exhaust. It looks like the exhaust is the same on the donor and the real truck, so maybe we have to shorten it a little bit, but overall I think we're just going to leave it as is for this moment. We're going to set the frame in the parts bin and we'll get to work on the rest of these parts. I don't even think we're going to have to take off the take the interior out. We're going to have to see how this goes. We do have some stuff here in the front. We're going to have to put medium green on this somehow and mask off this black stripe to make it all work. We're going to use a plier here, and we're just going to pull off these hand grabs off the front and just get them out of the road so they're not in the way, and make sure we put those in our parts bin. Then we're going to do the same on the side, and we're going to take off the uppers as well. Now that we have the hand grabs off, we'll move to the mirrors. We'll get those out of the way just to get them in a safe spot so we don't break them by accident as we're taping and handling the vehicle. You can grab these with a plier and just gently pull out those posts. Then we're going to go to the back. You can actually push the airlines out from the inside out, but since we have the interior still intact, this one we may just have to break that pin and glue it back on. But we can reach the outside pin right there. Or I guess the lower pin. We'll cut that mushroom plastic on the back and then push it from the inside out. And out it comes. The the upper air line, we're going to take our knife and go right behind there and see if we can pry that out without breaking the pin. This can be kind of tricky with the interior still inside. And we did end up breaking the pin, but that's not a problem. That's going to be okay. Next, we have the step on the driver's side and passenger side. I'm going to get those out of the road as well. I don't want to get overspray on them. It just makes taping easier with them not there. So what we'll do is there's a piece of mushroom plastic. We can cut that off on the inside right here. Let's take our knife and shave that off. Then we'll take our sharp object here and push that pin out. Again, if you're comfortable taking the interior clear out, that's perfectly fine. You can go ahead and do that. But I thought for fun, I'll try and do it without. This side trim and step is one piece. So there's a pin on the front side and then it slides into this groove, which makes it really, really nice. Driver's side, we'll go ahead and cut that off and push it out. The grille on the front operates the same as the rest of the vehicle. There's a piece of plastic right down inside here. This upper mesh plastic right here is for the headlights. We don't need to remove those, but we do need to cut that right down there, the upper one off, and that is what helps hold the grille in place. I'm going to switch hands here. And it's being a little stubborn, doesn't want to come out very well. Okay, we're going to give it just a little help on the outside and see if this won't make a difference. Now what I'm about to do here is very tricky because you can break these, so we don't want to be too aggressive. Okay, just making sure that this is all good. Not sure why that's bent, but it is. Then I'm going to take my knife and go right in here and see if I can just twist that just a little bit, give us a little more leverage. Again, not being aggressive, we don't want to break that. We're going to go ahead and push on that pin again and see if we can't get that to break free a little bit better. There, it's starting to come. You can see as I give a little bit of torque on it, it's wanting to come out. That's good. We'll do the same thing on the other side and try and get the driver's or passenger side pin out. There, like that. That popped real nice. Now it looks like here's a pin here. I haven't taken one of these apart in a long time, so my memory's a little fuzzy here on how this comes apart. So I'm just taking my time here, not trying to break anything. I know there's some mushroom plastic behind this interior, and there's really no great reason why I'm not taking the interior out other than I'm just trying to do it without taking the interior out. We may end up having to do that if we can't get this grill to pop out clean. Again, just gently twisting, gently twisting. We don't want to break this thing because to come up with replacement parts for the Transtar is almost impossible without buying another truck. And there it comes. Okay, a little more torque here on this side. Turn, turn, there we go. Perfect, that's just what we want right there. And as you can see, here we go. There's a pin here. 1, 2, 3, 4 pins hold that grill in place. And as you can see, there's a little stub that goes into this, or wedge I guess you want to call it, that goes into the die cast on the front here behind the grill, which is hard to get to, and then also right here and here on the back. So you have to push those wedges inside the cab and then pull the interior out. Finally, we have these two marker lights. I wish there was a better way to take these out. There's not. So our best bet is just to kind of pull them out gently. You don't want to grab them too hard because you can scuff them with your plier depending on what kind of plier you're using. So you do want to take your... and then you can break them just like that, which is not awesome. There's just not a good way to take those out because they are glued in place. And again, there is no good way to replace those, so you're going to have to hand make something out of another kind of product. That is unfortunate, but that's what happens. Okay, fine. Next, we have these decals here. We don't if you don't want to take them off, you don't have to necessarily. What I don't want to have happen though is after I get this thing masked and then painted, I don't want the outline of that decal to kind of show behind that paint. So I don't want to see this outline once I get this thing all painted, so I'm going to just take this off because really it's not very hard and it won't take us much time. This is just insurance that the paint turns out perfectly. Now what do I have here? To remove this decal, I've got lacquer thinner. I'm using the Q-tip right here. Going to dip my lacquer thinner here. You can use acetone, which works really well. If you don't have lacquer thinner, go to a discount store and find a $1 bottle of fingernail polish remover. Now, I'm not worried about getting into the top coat, into the white, because we're going to repaint this anyway, or at least paint where the decals are. So if you happen to rub or blur the paint, dull it, that's not a big deal because we're going to go and cover it. Again, the goal here is not to strip this thing down, just to do a nice quick little two-tone paint job on this cab. If you can see, I've wiped off the door handle, the door latch. Again, we're going to paint over that, so we'll have to take Molotow Chrome or something, another product of choice, and cover or put that detail for the door latch back in. We'll have to do that over here as well. And I'm going to grab a new Q-tip here. Q-tips are pretty cheap, so no use working hard with a dirty one. Okay, there we go, decals are off, and what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of wiping down where I want to paint. Just getting rid of fingerprints and stuff like that. I'm going to use rubbing alcohol before we apply paint, but this just kind of gets rid of all any dirt and whatnot while we've been working. I'm going to just scrape that glue off right here with a knife. Again, if we happen to scuff it a little bit, not a problem, because we're going to cover this and the airlines will be there anyway. Okay, now we are ready to mask and do the next step. For this, I'm going to use some 1/4" automotive grade tape. This is a 3M product I bought at Napa Auto Parts. You can buy something like this about anywhere, and then we'll follow it with frog tape, which you can buy anywhere. Discount stores, hardware stores, whatever. Looking at our photo, it looks like our green stripe is going to go right along the bottom edge here and then right along this line on the bottom of the cab. We can probably, and I will, skip taping the back except for to put a piece of tape right in here to keep the gray interior from getting overspray on it. So this will be fairly easy here and then along the back. Now you can see this trim part that we took off is going to be our natural line. So we're going to put tape right here across the front, and then that will be a natural line, so we don't have to worry about paint bleed, which is going to be really awesome because that's always a problem when you're doing a two-tone. And then yeah, so that'll be the bottom stripe. And now let's look at the top line. The top line comes to the bottom of the windshield, which we can't see actually. I'm assuming it goes to the bottom of the windshield. We can kind of see right here that there's a bit of white as it bends down and then goes in front to the bottom of the windshield. So I'm assuming we can use this line at the bottom of the front windscreen here, the windshield. We can come back and then just draw a straight line right along this curve right here. So right here there's a little line on both sides of the cab, and then right below this peg where the peg went for the mirror, we can go ahead and tape right there. And what we can do first is to remove some of that glue from the mirror so it doesn't make any type of wrinkle where the tape is going to go and then cause us to have paint bleed. We can continue our line clear around to the back, so this is all one nice happy line. We can use this natural line right here. Again, it's just going to help us with paint bleed. It's going to be pretty awesome. This is going to be I hope, I'm going to say this lightly, a very simple tape job. So shouldn't be too bad, but we're going to find out, right? First things first, let's go get rid of some glue. And then I'm also going to drill out this peg. Good, that's gone. Now we did mar up the paint a little bit, but we can come in here with a paint pen after we have our mirror back on and dab a little paint there with a toothpick or the paint pen itself at the tip is fine enough, and clean that up once the mirror's back on. The reason we're going to wait until the mirror's back on is because sometimes the glue will actually cover that up and then you don't need to use anything. So we're going to see how the glue sets once we get the mirror on and then go from there. I'm using my thumbnail here. You could use a screwdriver or some other soft object just to push that tape right below this lip right here, because that's going to help seal that tape so we don't get bleed. Okay, now for good luck, we're going to take another piece of tape and right across the front where that trim piece went, we're going to angle a piece of tape right in there like so, and that will just be another way to prevent that paint from getting where we don't want it. And then we'll just push that in there like so, just like this. Perfect. We love it. We love it. It's going well. And then you can either cut that excess tape off or just kind of push it in and out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it on one side, push it out of the way on the other. Since I have a little bit left over, we'll just use it. I'm going to start right here at the front, right at the bottom of that windscreen. And then we're going to wrap it around like so, just like this. Again, using our natural line as a guide, right there, using our thumbnail or fingernail, whatever, to push that tape right to that line. Now when you come around that curve, be careful, it'll want to walk on you, so you're just going to take your thumbnail again and just true it up against this natural line right here. Finally, now I can see here, now that I've had a chance to look at it from the top, that tape is not straight. So I'm just going to take my fingers here and straighten it up. And then we'll come in right here like so and make us a nice neat line. And then as I wrap this tape around, I'm going to kind of just bend it up and out of the way. To finish this tape job off, we'll get the frog tape out. And now we're just going to go ahead and wrap the rest of this cab up. This part doesn't have to be real glamorous. We just want to make sure that we have it taped so we don't get overspray in there. This shouldn't be a problem. Now, I'm going to be using an airbrush. If you're using an aerosol, that's a game changer because the airbrush can be a bit more precise than your aerosol paint. I have rubbing alcohol on a rag and just wiping it down, getting rid of any impurities that might be on the outside of this cab. Try to make sure you use a rag that doesn't have a lot of lint on it. That helps so you don't get lint inside the paint. And then you don't want to go too carried away with the lacquer or with the rubbing alcohol because that does reduce how adhesive the tape is. That can get in the way of that. So be careful how much of that. Don't be too generous when you're using the rubbing alcohol on your rag. Prime this, we're going to use just a really light coat of primer and then we'll go on with color after the primer's dry. I've used helping hands here and what I've done is just attach it to the tape on the top of the cab, so this is upside down, and then we'll hit it with primer this way. This is all the more primer we're going to use on this. As soon as this dries, we're ready for color. Our primer's dry, so what I've done here is, this is General Motors, Chevrolet, GMC, whatever, medium green. There's the paint code and all the goodies inside this. This was mixed at my local Napa here, and you can see the color there. Again, we're working from ancient photos, so we're just doing the best we can to match this paint with what we have to some extent, but get it as close as we can. Client says medium green is good, so that's what we're spraying. I have in my cup a bit of medium green here. This is mixed 1-to-1 with reducer, and this is all automotive grade product here. The paint's mixed automotive grade, and then of course the reducer is automotive grade. I mentioned here that we'd get overspray on the inside of the cab. There it is, you can see it. And then going around the side of the cab here. We'll go ahead and let this dry and shoot one more coat and call it good. We'll pull tape here in a little bit. It's time to do some treatment to this frame. One, the rear wheels are gray, they need to be black, and the front wheels need to be switched out for 10-hole chrome, an older style if you happen to have them. Now, you'll notice I already have a tie rod laying down here, and there's a bunch of paint messed up right here. In the first shot of this take, what happened was this spindle popped clear out from here, and then I was trying to work this front end of the suspension off to get this loose enough where I could snap it back in, and boy, what a fist fight that was. Long story short, I managed to break off, well, this just came separated. This needs to be glued back on. And I think we actually have to switch this off, but we'll look at our pictures to be sure. And then the fuel tank over here, and this box also came off while I was trying to get this thing apart. So you didn't get to see everything that I've done, but nevertheless, you know what has happened. So ideally what should happen is this whole spindle should not pop out. This is the first time that's actually happened to me. You take your tire tool and you go between the suspension and your wheel, and I'm gonna just go ahead and get my finger in here and push that spindle down so the wheel pops off and the tire and the spindle stays in place. So we're going to give this another go and see how we get along, because this should not be a fist fight as it is turning out to be, but you know, sometimes it just happens that way. There we go. That's what we want right there. Want to leave that spindle in and the tire comes off. Next we're going to do it to the other side, and we'll do the same treatment. And off we go. Now we're going to pull these screws out. If you don't have, I'm going to show you how I do this when we get to this point, but I always get rid of these pins because I don't like them. I found a better way to attach the front tires. So I just eliminate these all together, and instead of doing it the way I thought, I'll just take this plier and I'm just going to work that pin out there. Flip that around. Well, we're going to flip it some way. How are we going to get that dude? Well, anytime you have to force something, that's not a good sign. So if you're fighting it and you have to use force, or just I mean, we're talking 1/64 scale parts. If you have to use a lot of force, eventually what's going to happen, you're going to break something. That's been my experience. There we go. That is done. Hallelujah. Next, we're going to put this tie rod back in. Okay, to put your tie rod back on, if it happens to come off, make sure the teeth are facing the transmission. Slide it in and make sure these spindles are out, that they're not tucked in. Sometimes they'll turn on underneath there. You want these out just like that. And I like to go ahead and put one side on. If it doesn't, you know, snap it into place if it allows you. So take tweezer or something and put a little pressure on that tie rod, make sure it goes over that pin, and then go to the other side and put it on the other post. Just like so. There. Whoops, didn't get it. You don't want to handle this too roughly because it is plastic and they can break. Just want to make sure everyone knows that. And then just make sure it's seated, it's snapped into place, and it should be good to go. All right. Now this particular truck that I'm using has a set of older looking 10-hole chromes, and these are about as old as I can find. I think these came off of a DCP K100 Kenworth. I'm not real sure, but this is about as old a style as I could find. And we'll go ahead and put those on. What I like to do, and I have a video showing how to do all this, so don't fear if you can't, if this is all foreign to you. It has the part numbers in it, and I'll link it to this video as well in the description. But we're using these screws. Oop, I almost forgot the tool that I need. And then an Allen wrench, and this just makes this process go so much easier. And if you happen to have all the tools that I'm using, you can, it'll just make your life simple. To assemble these tires onto the spindles, what I like to do is use these screws, and I'll have a link for those in the description. I've actually gone ahead and drilled this out, and I'll have the size of that bit also in the description. But drill these spindles out, don't go real fast, we're just making them a little bit bigger, and the hole's already there, so we're not in a hurry. We don't want to break anything in the process of making the hole a little bit bigger. But I do that on both sides. Then I like to take a tweezer and drop that screw in the hole. And if it doesn't work the first time, don't fret. You can always try a different tweezer if you like. Once you have the screw in the spindle, I just go, since I don't have the other one in, I go through the opposite spindle and then turn the tire onto the screw. Just like so. Once you have it started, you can use your Allen wrench. And then you can go ahead and make that screw as tight as you want. I have it so the wheels will not turn at the moment. So I'm just back that off a little bit until it spins freely with a little bit of friction. That'll just help it keep from rolling off of a floor or off of a shelf or something of that nature. Because most of the time these they're not used as toys, and they're not intended as toys. So we don't want them to roll too freely and then come off of a cabinet. That would be no fun. There we go. Now we do the other side. And if your tweezers are at all magnetized, sometimes they want to not let your screw stay. Okay, there we go. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and use my Allen wrench to push that down. There, we'll turn that out so we can get our Allen wrench in, like so. And then, whoops. There we go. and we have it. Just check that, make sure it spins freely, but not too free. There we go. A little bit of friction there, not bad. And that's how we're going to put those wheels on. We already took the tanks off, which came off really, really simply, and we know that a silver tank goes here on the driver's side. Let's take a look at the passenger side. The passenger side tank, as we can see, is kind of narrow. It's not as wide as the one on the models. So we'll go ahead and finish taking this tank off and then find a substitute. And it doesn't seem to want to come off cleanly, which isn't a problem. We can break it, but there we go. Now it's off. Good. And we'll set that in our parts bin here. We got a couple other parts we need to go ahead and hide. And that looks like that will be all we need to take off. We're going to find another quick photo and see what is going on with the mud flaps. And it looks like it has black mud flaps on it, so we're going to leave those on. And then the rear mud flaps we'll leave as well. Now we're going to take a few moments to treat these gray tires. To add color to our wheels, we're going to use a black paint pen. You can buy these about anywhere. Any hobby store will have them. Hobby Lobby, even discount stores have. What I like to do when I'm doing this kind of work is have an old lid around from some kind of food container, and then put a little ink out on that food container. Then come in and then add in the color. It's good to have a fine tip type pen, that way you can leave the details you want as much as you can anyway. Notice that I am saving this silver ring, which is good. Then we're going to add the color to the inside. Now you'll notice I did go ahead and cover up that center cap, but we can add that back with a gray Sharpie or a silver paint pen. And one is finished. We got a little extra paint there. If you accidentally get too much paint inside one of the spots, just use a Q-tip and dab it out. And there you go. You'll want to make sure that you remove any hairs from the Q-tip, or find a Q-tip that's not falling apart like that one is. And time for the other one. Not sure why my hand is a little shaky today, but it is. When using a paint pen the way I'm doing it, and you notice how I'm dipping in that pool I made, if your environment is very warm, that paint does dry, so just be aware of that. You may have to do this process more than once, where you make a little puddle to dip in and out of. Okay, we're ready to go ahead and put a few accessories back on. We're going to start with applying this step and battery box that I broke off previously, and we'll start by using our tweezers and our favorite glue. Apply a little glue here, And we're just going to replace it where we found it, in the exact same spot. And I will try to position this where you can see. So we're going to set it there. I'm going to use a little bit of Instaset to get it stuck. And then after the Instaset's evaporated, I'm going to come in with just a wee bit more glue to make sure it doesn't pop off when it's shipped. Next, I looked on the real model. In the photo, you can see that the exhaust is missing the angle brace that goes down to the driver's side. All of that support is not on the real model, so we're going to make our life a little easier and take this off as well. We'll come in with a side cutter and easily just clip that angle piece, and then we'll also cut it just to get it out of the road down at the bottom where it attaches. Then we're going to come in on the side of the frame and cut that plastic clear off as well. This gives us a nice flat spot so we can mount our fuel tank right here. It looks in the photos that there is a step between the mud flap and the tank, and I'd like to replace that if we have room to put it there. So now we have plenty of room in order to add this fuel tank and then hopefully the step. Now on the real truck, I doubt that the tank was polished chrome, as we can see here. Unfortunately, I don't have something that color. We have glue on our tank, and then we will add it to the frame. We'll use just a little bit of Instaset to ensure that it doesn't come off. We have a step, and it does have pegs from the original donor that it came from. We're going to go ahead and cut those off because there's no holes for this step, or for these pegs anyway. So we'll cut those off flush, and I'm actually going to come in here and with a knife trim that just so it's perfectly flat. And as always, when you're using an X-Acto knife, be exceptionally careful that you don't cut yourself. And we barely have enough room for this right between that step and the frame. So we will go ahead and add a little bit of glue here. Not a whole lot. And we're going to come in from the bottom so we can get behind that mud flap. The frame, the original frame, is probably a little longer than the one we're using. We've put a lot of stuff in there. Okay. Finally, on the other side of the frame, we have this small fuel tank. And this is a 25-gallon tank that actually had a step, or a 50-gallon, I forget what size this is. It had a step on it that I took off and then used it for this purpose. So we'll go ahead and put that in there on the passenger side. Whoops. Let's get this where you can see. There we go. Just going to hold it in place, and then voila, little Instaset here. Hold that dude right there. We'll come back with just a little spot of glue after this is evaporated. Next, we're going to work on the cab. We'll go ahead and start assembling the cab. Before we get to putting the hand grabs and whatnot in, I like to go ahead and take a 1/32 bit and just drill out the holes where those go. Sometimes there's glue, and obviously now there's paint in there that can keep the hand grabs from being easy to put in. I'm not drilling through the die cast. All I want to do is clean out those holes of any glue and paint. And here you can see those are nice and clean now. On the passenger side here, all of those holes are pretty clean already. This one up here seems a bit smaller in diameter, meaning there's some paint in there or leftover plastic. And then we'll go ahead and clean out where the mirrors go. There's usually glue in those spots. And then we'll take a look at the driver's side, and those look pretty clean as well. Maybe just a little touch up on this one. And up here we'll clean out that glue. And I think we're going to be okay. That looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and grab our parts bin. That lid we used earlier, we're going to use again. And one thing that I normally do that I haven't done, and I will do that now, I like to keep a rag around and then assemble all the die cast on a rag. That way it's not touching this hard surface where we can scratch the paint. The lid I mentioned, what I like to do with that is just put a little bit of glue out there on the lid so we can dip our parts in and not have to worry about getting too much glue on them. These longer hand grabs here go in the top, and I am dry fitting these first to make sure that they go in well. Don't want to have to force them in. Anytime you have to force is a bad day. And I want to make sure that we get the right one, and there we go, just like so. And now we can go ahead and dip a little bit of paint, we can dip a little bit of glue. And voila, we have one in. And we'll grab another. Again, gonna dry fit just to be on the safe side. There's no use coming this far and having problems. So we'll just dry fit it real quick. And there we go. And we're gonna, now, let me see. No, is that the right one here? We'll also go ahead and put in the lower ones while we're here. Again, we're gonna dry fit those first. Make sure they go in well. And then glue. On to the other side. Perfect. We like what we're doing here. Pull that off. Get a little more glue out here for our spot. These hand grabs don't require a whole lot of glue, so don't get carried away. We'll go ahead and put the mirrors on. It might be a little difficult to see, but there is a front and a back to these mirrors, so you'll want to make sure that you look for the following. On the back of that mirror, there's a bit of an angle that is facing the front of the cab, so if there's a bit of an angle, and it might be difficult to see, you can even take a picture of it before you disassemble, but right here, this faces the front, and then you can see what looks like an outline on the inside and outside. That is what faces the back of the cab. So there is a right and a left side, and then of course this angle part faces the bottom. So I'm going to dry fit these quick, and then if they dry fit well, we'll go ahead and apply them. Dipping the glue so we don't get too much on. We need just enough. And if you recall when we tore this down where I scraped a bit of glue and I said we can come back with white, or we can wait till the end and see how our glue covers up the hole as well as that post on the mirror. Well, you can see that covers that up well where we scraped some of the paint away to the die cast. So I don't think we're going to need to touch that up, but we'll know after it's good and dry. But right now I'm pretty certain we won't have to do anything. Okay, dry fitting again. Everything's going well. And here we go. And there we have it. We can begin putting the trim on and the front hand grabs. Here we go. We're going to dry fit those as well. And voila. Okay, we are good to go there. Next, we can put our grill in. This is again one of those things you don't want to force. If it doesn't go in easy, let's not force it, okay? That's a good way to break stuff. And this is not going in easy, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this out, and then we're going to use a drill bit and clean out those holes. What I have here, we're going to try a 1/16 inch bit first and just see if we can clean any paint and glue out that might be in the way. And then I've got another size here. So we just clean that out at all. And then I'm also going to look at these pegs and make sure there's no glue or paint or foreign material on those that might cause us any trouble, or at least make it so those pins don't slide. If you do anything with these pins, be very gentle. And if you break them, it's not the end of the world, but if we can avoid breaking them, that's better. There we go. Now the center ones went in fairly easy. Let's go ahead and see about the sides here. I'm going to use my fingernail to push on the black trim right about where that hole, where that pin is. And that one's not going at all. Okay, again, if we have to force it, probably better to just take a deep breath and try again. So go ahead and slide that out. We're just going to go in reverse, twisting like we did when we took it off originally. And I will see about just scraping that pin just a little bit. Sometimes it's all it needs. Okay, let's try again. There we go. That's all we needed, just to scrape that pin a little bit, and it slides in well. Perfect, perfect, perfect. We like what we're doing here. That's good. Okay, next we have these steps. And there's also a driver and passenger side, as you recall. There's only one hole, and then there's a slot right on the back side right here. There's a little bit of a groove right there. Right here where that white paint is, which I'm going to take that out just to get it out of the road. Okay. And then the back part is going to go in first, and then the pin is going to slide in, hopefully. And voila, that away. We like that. Now, you'll notice I didn't use any glue yet, but we're going to take some of our glue over here on our lid, just a little bit over here, and we're just going to go ahead and cover that pin, just so it doesn't want to pop out while it's sitting on a shelf. And we need just a little bit more here. And then we'll put just a wee bit back here over that step, and done. And instead of getting the pin, I might just get the front of that step this time. We don't need it. It fit pretty snug, so I'm not too concerned about it coming out. This is just insurance. So we're not having to do a whole lot of gluing right there. Next, we need to put our air lines back on. Now, we did manage to break the pins on our air lines, so that's not the end of the world. And you'll notice they're already coming off of those holders. But we can glue those back on once we have them in place. So we're going to twist these a little bit and get them straightened up. And I think I'm also going to just use my drill bit here. Let's drill that plastic out. Just kind of clean out that hole. Get rid of any glue like we've done previously. We have just a little bit of a pin left right there. We'll go ahead and use that. There we go. And then finally, I took a break and forgot to turn my camera on. One of the details on the real truck we need to put on the model is these chrome straps. Now, the real truck, it looks like the straps are clear out to the side. We don't have a tank like that, so I used my Molotow chrome and added that detail in. You can mask it if you want to. That's entirely up to you. You can add a little bit of Molotow to the fuel cap right there. And if you're not shaky, you won't make a mess. I'm shaky today, don't know why. But Molotow is what works. If it doesn't flow through your pen well, just warm up the pen. One of the other details was I put the turn signal back in the driver's side. I broke the passenger side turn signal, so we got to come up with something for that. And then last but not least, we need to paint this air can black. So we'll use a paint pen for that as well. To replace my turn signal, I have a little bit of this. And these used to be really common, and now they're really hard to find, and they're expensive for what they are. But these are light bars that used to be, like I said, common. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and cut just a chunk of this out and see if I can make this work. And here we go. Now we have our part, and This is what's frustrating, because if you lose this, then you got to make another one. To find it would be almost impossible. So I'm kind of grabbing it a bit gingerly. Maybe just a wee bit more glue. I do not want that thing to come off. There we go. And there we have it. That's on. It's a little longer than the factory one. Wow, I don't think I could make that any shorter, as fragile as that's going to be. I think that might be as good as we get on that particular part. As for the rest of this, I've been looking at the photos here, and the exhaust looks pretty close. It's a little tall, but to shorten it, I don't think we'd gain a whole lot as far as how well it looks. And there's some yellow decals on the door. Those are unnecessary, plus there are no photos to reproduce those decals anyway. As I mentioned here, we do need to turn that air can black, so we'll go ahead and do that. We're just going to run a little bit of this paint pen around here and cover the outside edges of this chrome with black paint. And that will get us pretty darn close. Oh, a little too much paint there. There we go. Like I said, just want to get the outside edges here. We're not going to get too crazy covering that up. And there we go. I will use a Q-tip just to dab a little bit of that extra paint off. That way it's not wet for a long time and we accidentally grab it. Plus we have some down here that we need to mop up. There. We'll use a tweezer here and grab any of these foreign hairs out of there. There. And just another dab right there. Perfect. Okay. And that, I think, we can call oh, well, wait. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we can take our chrome pen here and replace that center cap. You might be able to use a gray Sharpie if you don't have a chrome pen, or silver Sharpie, I guess. And there we have it. Our retro Transtar build is done.